To be a 10-minute story of some sort of fun and coincidence that's come my way in the last few years, and I've built it up as being recent finds, as though I've been busily researching very thoroughly for a long time, but there's much less to it than that. But just to start off, that in May of this year, the Chicago community decided to dedicate a park in the suburb, Rogers Park, that Marion lived in for the last 2.5 decades of her life, to her name. So it's now the Marion Marnie Griffin Beach Park, and the person in the photo there is Professor Christopher Vernon from Landscape Architecture in the University of Western Australia, but a native Chicagoan and a frequent visitor. So he made a point of being at the dedication ceremony. Now, are these readily visible, or should we have darker lights, less lights? Yeah. I can see them perfectly well. Now, the actual confluence for me was that I had a work purpose in being in Boulder, Colorado in the 22nd to the 25th of June this year, and Brett Hodges, who just introduced me, happened to say at a meeting we had at the committee that the 20th of June is the American equivalent of our society. They're having their annual gathering this year in Madison, Wisconsin. And for those of you who don't know, and I didn't know, Madison is quite a small university town. It's a manufactured capital, but in the 1830s, not the 1910s that ours is. And we do know that Walter visited Madison as part of his work for Frank Lloyd Wright, and part of the meeting was our Professor James Werrick from University of New South Wales, again landscape architecture, putting the theory that there is some element of Madison in the winning design for Canberra. So I decided to attend that event. But I'd also been there earlier, and a local dedicated a promoter of Marion and Walter took me on a little suburban tour, and this is the home that Marion finished her days in Rogers Park. That's the front door there, and that's her fireplace, the hearth, where she spent her final years. And it may look like there's some unruly dogs in Chicago, but that was actually done by David Heaton as an act of homage in 2012. The sprinkling is in fact water from Lake Burley Griffin, and he had just come from Lucknow where the same ceremony was performed on Walter's grave. And while I was there in 2012, I went to see the Rudolf Steiner branch in Chicago, and this is what the reading room looks like. And it was only when I got home and I was looking through my photos that it occurred to me that if Marion had any books when she died, or as she entered her dotage, because she did slide into senility, it wasn't a sudden departure, that they're likely to have ended up here. So given that Madison is so close to Chicago that they in fact share an airport, I couldn't pass up the opportunity to go there again. So, and had a closer look. And this is the main reading area, and I went through the shelves, pulling out everything that looked like it was printed before 1961 when Marion died, and just opened it to see if there was any sign that it belonged to Marion. And sure enough, I went right through these, finding nothing, and there was one there. And it was at the point where I had pretty much decided that I should really go and see the sights of Chicago. This is a bit of a sort of fool's errand. But I also had the company of a local member of the art section of the Anthroposophical Society, and she was able to arrange for me to get in through this door here, which became much more important. And that may look rather ramshackle, but I assure you it's worse than it appears. Those shelves in front of you are stacked too deep. So you had to go through all the books in the front, put them aside in a pile, and then go through the books in the back. But in the process, I found 14 books that Marion had written her name in, 13, and a 14th one which I do not doubt belongs to her. It was beside one with her name on it, and it was on a subject that was very dear to her heart. So I'm just going to skip through images of them. I hope you can read those. The one on the left is a brown paper cover that I presume she put on it, saying members only. And it's an indication of Marion's free-willed spirit, that you open that up, and although it's for members only of the Anthroposophical Society, it says, "Happy birthday, Clamira," it's her niece, from Auntie Marion. The one in the centre there is the one that doesn't have her name on it, but it does have her handwriting in it, and it's by the man who she describes as her beloved teacher in anthroposophy, Alfred Maybolt, the world-travelling botanist. Now, the one on the right looked to be of strategic importance because it was from the mathematical section. I had thought that Marion would have books from the art section of the Anthroposophical Society, but here she was having a book from the mathematical and astronomical section. So I decided to bring that one back along with this one, and those two books are available for people with clean hands and good hygiene to have a look at after the formalities have closed. The key thing that unites them, though, is that they're in German. So 7 of the books are in German and 7 are in English. And that in turn means for a monolinguist like myself an extra challenge in deriving meaning from the annotations that Marion put in. So it's not just a simple matter of whether she gave her Castle Crag address or her Chicago address, to give you an idea of when she obtained it, but also she's indicating what's important to her and how she's translating the text, because she learned German academically as part of her architecture degree in the 1890s, and then brushed up her skills in the late 1920s, early 1930s in Castle Crag with German immigrants. And this is a senior student at Glenavon School in Castle Crag, and he has this book, which arrived by express post today, and although it's only a $20 book, and now it's a very precious book because he has transcribed into it what he found in the German original. And it's a very early book. It's 1931, but obviously a very small circulation because it's only printed on one side of the paper in what looks like what I'm recalling from my youth as a Roneo technique. It's not normal typescript as it would have been done at the time, and that was the other thing that made me decide that that would be the second one that I would bring back to Australia. So where do we go from here? Professor David Van Zanten, who is a German speaker, he has been to Canberra and given talks, and he's the editor of Marion Marnie Griffin Revisited, has looked through them, and he thinks that it's a major task to derive meaning from the annotations. But the Art Institute of Chicago, I was hoping that they would want to acquire them and look after them, but no, but they are willing to scan them so that those jottings that Marion has done almost exclusively in pencil can be made available to people like me on the other side of the world. And the Rudolf Steiner branch in Chicago now regard them as special because in some instances they had 7 copies of the same book and Marion's was just one sitting beside the other 7. They were set in order of subject matter, not who donated them. They're going to look after them and keep them separate. And the Anthroposophical Society in Australia, the St John Group in Sydney, is interested to take custody of them, and the Chicagoans concede that there is more interest in Marion here than there is there. And indeed, they haven't found anyone in Chicago with a recollection of Marion, which comes as a great surprise and a disappointment to me. There's a few avenues I haven't yet tried, but it's looking unlikely. And then, of course, there's the major task of drawing information and inference from the books themselves. So this is the library in Sydney where they might end up, and there is a Griffin collection in that cupboard there. So you need to contact the librarian and arrange for the doors to be unlocked for the purpose, but there is a resource there for research, and at this point all I can say is that it's an open question. I'll be involved in putting the case for moving them, but of course not until the Art Institute of Chicago has done their fine job of delicately scanning the pages. It needs to be done. There's 2 elements of care. One is to not damage the spine of the book, so only opening it up to 90 degrees, and also have glancing angle light, because if you have direct light the way you do on a flatbed scanner, the pencil just appears white and is extremely hard to read. So there's the question. Will it move from Chicago to the Sydney Anthroposophical Society headquarters? And that's all to be said. Thank you for your attention.